as many larvas are only a condensation of evil thoughts and feelings flowing through the infinite spaces of other worlds. They can even create physical sickness if they attach themselves to your astrosome for some time, which, as we know, has exact counterparts in the physical body, in the form of ganglions, and so on. If an important part of the astrosome is damaged or weakened, there will be corresponding damage or an ailment for the physical body. Sometimes mysterious disorders are produced in the body's cells without any visible contagion by bacteria. The fact that such cancers, which have enigmatic causes, are now becoming so rapidly widespread might have its origins in the excess of evil human feelings, hatreds, and other negative forces put into play in the aura of our planet. These things may create innumerable larvas and other kinds of undesirable forces, which later bring disorder to the work of human cells, resulting in malicious tumors and cancerous growths. In general, occultism ascribes disease to an astral origin or affection of the astrosome, later inevitably transferred to the physical body. Some even believe in the astral origin of bacteria which cause sickness and death. We will now explain and analyze the laws according to which work satrams, mantrams, and theurgic means, such as special kinds of prayers, used in their oral form, in occultism, conjurations, and exorcisms. These things are better covered by the Eastern tradition than the Western, so I will mention here the theories borrowed from the Sankhya philosophical system. There is a universal substance, which is unique, and all existing objects are only different forms of it. We perceive these forms through our 5 physical senses. Therefore, they can be classed under the name of the sense which is able to register these forms. Each sense is sensitive to certain kinds of atomic movements, vibrations, as some occultists like to call them. Hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. All these belong respectively to the vibrations of ether, light, air, water, and earth, which are also movements of atoms. So, ether is movement in all directions. Light, movement in straight lines. Air is whirling movement, that is vortexes or tourbillons. Water is balanced movement, while earth is a resting movement. Apart from these things, each of these elements possess the qualities of the other 4 as secondary characteristics. Ether, apart from sound, also has color, form, taste, and smell. We can see all the other applications of these laws for ourselves. Of course, only those who are able to separate these properties can perceive them in their experiments, and a high degree of knowledge is necessary in order to verify these laws experimentally. Finally, each of these kinetic forms is also represented in human mentality. Therefore, everything can correspond to another under certain conditions. But here we are primarily interested in the energy which we call sound, or the acoustic fluid. It possesses, apart from other qualities, those of mobility, fluidity, and softness. In the Sankhya system, it is called sneha. Long before there were Western physicians, Hindu occultists knew that sound emits calories, exciting movement by their impulses of power called pranamitva. Stringed instruments, rhythmical melodies, the noise of thunder, all these things show us the existence of these different properties. A sinister example can be found in the ancient Chinese art of torturing. The greatest crime in the former imperial China was, of course, disobedience to, or plotting against the emperor or his family. A particularly horrible death awaited anyone unlucky enough to be caught. He was stripped and bound by wrists and ankles to a short pole erected under a large bell. When the tongue of the bell moved, it emitted a loud sound above the body of the doomed man. This sound gradually destroyed the tissues in his body, firstly attacking the nervous system, and slowly bringing unspeakable suffering to the whole organism. The executioners worked in relays, and after a certain number of hours had passed, the contortion and wriggling of the condemned man's body was relieved by death. No physical contact other than sound was the killer. As a resume, that form of universal substance called akasha in the Eastern tradition possesses a specific quality like sound, and generic qualities like form, heat, and movement. Some classes of sounds contain perfect forms, while others are richer in calories, and still others emit more movement. These classes of sounds can be distinguished, produced, and their intensity augmented by different psychophysiological instructions. Similarly, Some fakirs have been able to raise themselves into the air, compare the well-known levitation of some Western saints, for some time, just by the use of a certain sound, while being under special nervous tension. In other words, the fact, well known to occultists, of influencing matter by nervous force is at work here. Apart from the direct action of sound, all vocal means used in occultism also have their inner significance, their souls. It is the concentrated effort of will of an operator who uses sounds as an outer expression of his will. So we see that harmonious combinations of the physical properties of sound and their inner meaning may be a powerful weapon in the hands of a skilled occultist magician, as well as those of a theurgist. But we may have to consider some subtle differences between ceptrums, mantrams, and prayers. Some of these three classes of instruments were originally created in certain languages, and thus their effectiveness has been supported by and connected with definite groups of sounds arising from pronunciation or chanting. Such means lose the major parts of their value if translated into other tongues, thereby becoming deprived of their direct, active properties derived from sound vibrations, despite the fact that the ideas behind them still remain the same. To this category belong almost exclusively secret and purely occult and magic formulas, unknown to the public at large, the famous Om being an exception. Certain Christian prayers and incantations, the Hindu Gayatri and other well-known popular mantrams, as well as the Vikara, self-inquiry, have their power in their contents rather than in particular combinations of sounds. Therefore, they are effective even when translated and used in other languages by the faithful and devotees. Finally, it may be added that from all 5 kinds of vibrations to which our senses respond, only 3 are in general use in Hermetism. I am giving them in the order of their effectiveness and usefulness. 1. Sound. Mantrams, cetrams, prayers, exorcisms. 2. Visual. Pentacles, sacred letters, magic drawings, symbols. 3. Smell. Incense of all kinds, perfumes, smoke. The student will surely realize that all of these means are used foremostly for the support of his own willpower and for the influence of astral beings, which are sensitive to the astral counterparts of these means, 1 to 3. There is no need to explain further why in all religions and occult operations, words, chanting, and singing are so widely used. They are expressions of and vehicles for the energy, emanated by the priests and operators. From ancient Egyptian history we know that special kinds of sounds were produced by Egyptian priests and magicians before their troops went into battle. As a result, the fighting spirit of the men was raised enormously, and they then fought with such fury that they defeated their foes. In the not-so-distant past, when wars were won by man-to-man fighting on the battlefields, and not by air bombardment or the annihilating fire of artillery, whole regiments went storming ahead with their bands playing loud bombastic marches. The orchestra of the sinking Titanic played almost to the last on the upper deck of the doomed ship, and helped to maintain order and quieten those who were unable to find a place in the too few lifeboats, and who already looked into the eyes of death, reaching for them from the icy waves of the Atlantic. I have heard it said that the insincere laughter of some people is able to crack the glasses on a table. In ancient Greek mythology, we can find indications that the gods used different syllables to restrain the disobedient souls of dead men, thus preventing them from entering forbidden areas. One was the mysterious Yao, or Ieo, which was close to the unpronounceable Yod-He-Va-He. The Bible tells us that the impregnable walls of Jericho were destroyed when the Jews circled them for some days, incessantly blowing on special kinds of horns. All of this shows us the formidable influence of the human psyche of vibrations, which we call sound. Another kind of magic use of the powers of sound is the well-known method used by the Australian Aborigines to sing to death those among them who have transgressed the tribal laws. It is said to be effective, inevitably bringing about the death of the one so sentenced in from a few days to several weeks. Usually the cause, from the medical point of view, cannot be discovered, but the dying person is perfectly conscious of his approaching end, as there is no known cure against the singing to death, as performed by the elders of the tribe. We know little about these strange rites, but it is generally believed that they consist of the singing of special songs by the tribal men as they sit in a circle around their magic drawings. Only fully grown aboriginals, initiated into manhood, can perform such ominous activities which are strictly guarded from the knowledge of white men. The only particulars which I have been able to get are that these songs of death are mostly high-pitched, and the name of the condemned person is mentioned in them. Sometimes a bone is pointed towards him, but his presence is not essential for the effectiveness of the curse. Some victims have tried to escape death by fleeing far from their tribal grounds, even up to 1,000 miles away, but without any known success. Modern science itself shows that some kinds of sounds, those of very high frequency, inaudible to the normal human ear, have a definite destructive power for the living tissues and even organisms, which may be exposed for some time to the influence of such sounds. This was discovered about 30 years ago, and research still continues. To date, it has been found that small animals like mice and frogs can be killed by the high-frequency waves generated by inaudible sounds. So, the principle has been discovered, and its application to the larger combinations of living cells, such as the human body, is only a question of further research. So we can see that some old occult truths and traditions may gradually be corroborated by official science, to the measure that it advances and works on subtler manifestations of the physical forces. Here we have mentioned only a few of the many examples, which can be discovered by those interested in comparative studies of this kind.